Good morning. Today on Spotlight, sustainability. What is it? Well, simply put, it's a balancing act. A United Nations report once noted, sustainable development meets the needs of the present without compromising the well-being of future generations. As our world continues to grow, what are we doing today with our air, food, water, land, and lifestyle to make our communities, urban, suburban, and rural, safe and healthy places for future generations? Around the world, that's becoming a growing topic of conversation. Joining us today to talk about it are Skiles Boyd of DTE Energy, Carla Walker-Miller, founder of Walker-Miller Energy Services, Dan Carmody of Eastern Market, and Ivana Kalafatic of Detroit Is It. It's Sunday, December the 30th, almost a new year. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Sustainability. When you hear that word, what comes to mind?
Well, yeah, that's a great question because it is different for everybody. But it's basically economic, environmental, and social overarching view of what all you do. For DTE Energy, we're an energy company, so it's clearly environmental is the biggest part of it. But we're also involved in community, and
sure.
And if the company's not doing well to start with, we can't do any of this.
Right.
So the economic is always important.
Absolutely. All right, that gives us a good synopsis. Carla Walker-Miller?
My view of sustainability has really evolved over time. As an energy person, I used to think of it as energy efficiency and all the savings, all the positive benefits of using less energy and generating less energy from fossil fuels.
Now, was that when you were in the corporate world?
I was in the corporate world, and even early in my private business as well, because I've been totally energy focused. And now I do see it as looking at all of the factors involved in helping people, the planet, and profit to coexist and thrive at the same time. All the considerations involved in those three factors.
All right. Dan Carmody, you run one of the most popular places in this city that's packed all the time, Eastern Market. What does it mean, sustainability?
Well, for us, there's been a big transition because I've been there 11 years. The first 9 years, sustainability was all about economic sustainability. We were trying to get a better pulse on something that had seen its better days. Mm-hmm. The last 2 years, with the investment wave that's coming at the center part of the city of Detroit, our new role is to be traffic cops, to slow development down and to imagine how we can build a more sustainable place. For us, sustainability is really focused right now on all of those roofs that are being proposed or built and how we capture the stormwater so we don't put it in the Detroit River, which is a problem throughout the city, to make sure we improve water quality as we revitalize the city.
And then you also have a concern about 10 years from now, what will Eastern Market look like, and will Eastern Market still be the place that we know it today?
So keeping the thing going through the tough times may be easy compared to keeping our DNA through the good times. And so we're a place that everybody should be welcomed. We're a place that's about making food products. And as you look around the rest of the country, as those local market areas in New York or Washington or Chicago saw the kind of real estate investment that we're now seeing, mm-hmm. They were basically converted into a very lovely neighborhood of bars and boutiques and lofts, but they were no longer a unique public market district. And so we've seen what's possible. We're working very hard with the city of Detroit and with our developer community to make sure that doesn't happen in Detroit.
That stays a unique gem. Ivana, Detroit Is It. What is that, and what does sustainability mean to you and the organization that you founded?
Well, we're a media platform, a bit of a new breed of media. We are taking story and content with data and analytics and mixing that with some pretty interesting ways of looking at digital marketing and social media. And we're hyper-local, so it's really all about the community and shedding light on anything that anybody might be interested in within the Metro Detroit area. So we, having launched about a year ago, We've been looking at new models of sharing and increasing awareness to topics, and sustainability is something that we feel very strongly about. I personally have for many years been involved within renewable energy organizations and strategy around them. So looking at how the environment is being impacted by new models of both urban development and also educating or engaging the audiences to new ways of looking at topics. So for us as a media platform, it's about bringing awareness to the topic of sustainability.
All right. We know that the population is growing. We know that this is not just a topic for the city of Detroit or for the state of Michigan or just for this country. It's all around the world. When we come back right after this break, I want you all to tell me how we're doing here in Michigan dealing with this big topic. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I teased before we went to the break, how are we doing? How's Michigan rate? How's Detroit rate in terms of this topic? Are we doing a good job, or are we way behind the 8 ball? Who wants to take that? Scott?
Again, I'll start. I think we're doing pretty well. I mean, we're not perfect, and there are people that are ahead of us. But the thing with sustainability is it's a journey, and everybody is kind of in a different place. For example, at DTE, and in most of the Midwest, we had coal-based generation that really supplied the energy to recover from World War II. And that was great at that time. But as time goes on, we find better ways to generate electricity, generate power for our customers. So we've now established this goal of at least an 80% reduction in our carbon emissions by 2050 and probably more, but with goals along the way to get there.
We've all heard Jerry Anderson's radio commercial. I've almost memorized it. It comes on so often. But a lot of people wonder, why not 100% renewable energy?
Well, you know, that's a great goal, but we also have to balance, like I said earlier, with sustainability, you're balancing economics and community. And
if you went to 100% right away, we probably couldn't afford it with our bills?
Well, there's probably two things. One, technologically, I'm not sure we could do it even if we had unlimited money. And secondly, it's the cost.
Right.
And so, you know, in Detroit area and Michigan, we still have a lot of people that struggle to pay their energy bills.
Sure.
And we need to do this at a pace that gets us there in a way that they can afford it. Now, you know, 100% renewables, you know, the sun doesn't shine at night, and, you know, the wind doesn't always blow. So there are times whenever you're probably going to have some other source of energy, and maybe it's batteries ultimately, but even that is an environmental issue. I mean, those are chemical processes.
Sure. Other thoughts?
Well, in the world of stormwater management, Detroit has a long way to catch up. The city has been, as you may have noticed over the last 20 years, had some other problems to deal with, and stormwater management hasn't risen to the top. Detroit Water and Sewer Department has an aggressive plan to get caught up, and that involves some pretty high user fees to stormwater management people that own hard surfaces.
And we're an old city with old infrastructure.
That's the key problem here. I mean, but the problem is the infrastructure is ancient. The good news is we have the ability to leapfrog and think about forms of sustainability that people that kind of kept up going along the way don't have, because they have a lot more invested in the older technology. So we do have a chance to leapfrog, but it's going to take a lot of work.
And we have a chance, but as Dan mentioned, we have some catch up. The fact that we allowed a debate to continue in this country for the last 15 or 20 years, debating, even though the science is there, means that we are in catch-up mode instead of getting ahead of the problem. So when I think about sustainability, I think about the fact that communities are still not engaged. DWSD is engaged. DTE Energy is engaged. But the people who are making decisions every day to pour cement and to build patios, making operational decisions about how they run their homes and their businesses, they haven't caught up, and we have to bring them into the conversation.
So we're really talking education here and
Absolutely.
educating our communities. You're very much involved in consulting with a lot of businesses. You do it now on the other side of the fence now that you're out of the corporate world, but working with the corporate world. And you're also a rarity, so to speak, in this business, African-American female running this type of company. How does diversity and inclusion fit into this big topic?
It's a huge issue. When we hear sustainability, communities of color don't see their play in that. Sustainability is not real or relevant to us because we still hear issues about the polar bears, right? The ice caps melting. We don't see that the severe wet weather events that cause our basements to flood and the fees that we're paying to DWSD to help them solve their issues are affecting us every single day. So we have more of a part to play. We have a major role in addressing sustainability because of the economic and the societal impact on our communities.
Food and food waste. And how does that factor into all of this?
Food waste is zoomed to the top of the popularity charts in terms of people seem to be very focused on it, and that's good because there's a lot of food waste. The problem with food waste is it happens from the farmer's field to the consumer's refrigerator when they buy too much and they throw it out at the home. And there's not one problem, it's a series of many problems. But people are much more conscious about it, and I think that we're seeing a lot of innovation in the field that is encouraging. For example, at Eastern Market, we just helped spawn a company that was in the northwest part of the state. They do small batch freezing of Michigan crops. That technology hasn't been available to our farmers. So the farmers who come to Eastern Market, they raise broccoli or cauliflower, they leave 20% of it in the field because there's no market for it. Well, here's a chance to bring it to market, freeze it so people can eat it have local product during the winter months. So again, that's one way of reducing food waste.
So there are incredible companies that have been born off this notion. Some of them are 10 years old, some of them 20, some of them 10 months old, that are out of New York, that are out of San Francisco, that are out of major metropolises, where they're taking leftover food from that day and, for example, either translating that to homeless and or repurposing into programs that are needed on the local basis. There's a great organization in Detroit called Detroit Dirt. And what Passion Murray does is she actually takes on that challenge of food waste and translates it into compost. And guess what? Local businesses and restaurants are now taking that compost for the fields that they're gardening and growing their food through to repurpose it, and it's actually getting recycled right in front of our eyes.
Right. I'm sorry. Hold your point just a second. Need to get to a break. I'm going to come back and see what's on your mind. And you have something you want to say too. We'll get right back to Skiles Boyd in just a second. Stay with us. Dan, I cut you off. I also cut Skiles Boyd off, but we're going to get to.
Well, I just want to, it triggered a thought when we're talking about Detroit Dirt. That's a great example of anecdotal success, not systemic success. And so I'm embarrassed at the market. I go to markets around the world where there is zero landfill. We're pretty proud that we finally got cardboard out of our waste stream, but we're at about 80% of the waste at Eastern Market goes to landfill. And so we're working with Passion, trying to figure out a way to do some composting. But in terms of moving from incremental, isolated success, we have to figure out better ways to do it across the board.
As you travel, is there a city that perhaps something similar to Eastern Market that you just say, it is sort of the creme de la creme, and if we could ever get Eastern Market to that point, we're really in good shape? Not to say that we're doing badly, but what's maybe the next stage up?
I have had, as a result of the McGregor Fund, a chance to travel the world, because for Eastern Market, most of our peers are not in North America anymore. Most of them have disappeared because of that real estate success in cities around North America. Our peers are around the world, and the one that inspires me are the two in Melbourne, Australia. They have a very similar Eastern market at the edge of downtown exists in a place that most other markets have been booted out a long time ago because of rising land values. So the Queen Victoria market in Melbourne, Australia is the closest parallel to Eastern market that we found around the world. And there's a lot we can learn from them, and in many ways there's stuff they can learn from us.
All right, very good. Scouse, you had something you've been holding on to for quite a little bit. Hopefully you haven't forgotten what it was.
No, I was just getting back to the question on diversion and inclusion. And when I think about whether it's food waste or how we handle our water runoff in the city, or the big issue of climate change, we really need to have everybody engaged in this, and nobody can be excluded. And whether, locally and, even internationally, and in order to resolve this issue and reach the goals that we need to reach.
The secret is that we're paying for it right now. It's just not visible. It's not obvious to us how we're paying for it. But again, we're paying for it in rates, we're paying for it in fees, we're paying for it in health consequences. We're paying for it right now.
So even if people say it's not my profession, it's not what I deal with on a day-to-day basis,
you deal
if
with
you're
it.
living in this world, you're dealing with it in some way,
with
shape,
it.
or form.
Absolutely, Chuck.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I think it's so eminent on the news. I mean, you're looking at what's going on in California. You're looking at what's going on with rising seawaters in New York. I mean, these are cities that we've either all visited or that we know of. Detroit also lives on the water. Detroit has a lot of natural resources that are here. We're lucky enough to have the quantity of fresh water that we have in Michigan and surrounding us. But the more, to Carla's point, the more versed you are on the topic, and maybe this is also, I'm a big believer in starting young. Maybe this is about educating within the school as well, from a basic perspective, because like you mentioned, I mean, we're human beings and we're breathing this air and we're drinking this water. We should know what we're doing to our own bodies and to our families.
Yeah. Dan,
sometimes it's not the added cost, it's a slight inconvenience, like sorting household waste, for example. For us at the market, sorting a little bit of our waste. So I'm not throwing stones, I'm just saying it's not a significantly higher cost to many sustainable practices. It's a little bit of inconvenience and a little bit of just put in as a higher priority.
Hang on one second. I keep interrupting.
That's all right.
Let me squeeze a little break in here. When we come back, I'll pick up with Scouse Boy. Stay with me. And welcome back to Spotlight. I am not picking on you, but I want to pick back up because I know you have something on your mind.
Sure, I think getting back to your point of education, and I think the thing that we need to do, be very careful when we educate people, is we don't scare them. I think on some of these issues, we've said, boy, we've got to do this and have it done by tomorrow, and that scares people away, and they say, well, I can't afford that. And what we've said a long time is, like on the climate issue, and my boss uses the example of a pile of wood, if we had started picking up the wood and chopping it way back when we started talking about this issue, we'd have the wood pile half gone by now. Instead, we talked about, we need to empty this wood pile immediately, or it's too big of a job and nothing gets done. So I think we have to be real careful in our education that we just get on with the job.
Right, and it's a big thing to tackle, but you're right, you just got to dig in and do it. Carla?
And the education needs to occur for consumers and for companies that provide the goods and services. A great example is my driveway needs to be repoured. I need to replace my driveway. And 2 years ago, I would have poured cement. I would have just replaced it with a price on cement. Right now, even as I'm getting quotes, I have to ask for permeable cement that would allow drainage and decrease my DWSD bill. But the people who are offering me that service, I literally have to educate them about what I really need as opposed to just accepting what their norm is. So education is really important.
There's also the dark side of sustainability, and that's corporations, what I would call greenwashing. Everything becomes sustainable.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of sustainable things described as sustainable that don't really contribite very much.
Such as, give us an example.
Pardon?
Give us an example.
And I'll jump in on that. There are some things that they produce more greenhouse gases, so that by the time they get to you, they've actually wasted more money, energy, and there's no efficiency. But they can say the end product is sustainable. But if you don't know about the manufacturing process and the sourcing process, you may actually be doing more damage by supporting some products.
Dan, I'm curious, when cities try to sell themselves, especially in terms of branding and especially the convention bureaus, and say this is why you should come to Detroit versus Seattle or
Portland,
somewhere else. Right. One of the things they're always doing is those things that tourists are attracted to. Eastern Market is one of those things. When you're talking with the city leaders and everything, do they get it?
In 2015, late 2015, early 2016, we saw the trend changing.
Okay.
And we did a strategy plan to address this issue. The city and the Nature Conservancy together are spending $800,000 to take our strategy and actually make a plan how we can defend the market from being overrun by investors while at the same time attracting the investment that we desperately need to reinvent it. Okay. So I would say they get it about to the 50% level in the sense that it's a complicated thing, and there's many city leaders have many things on their minds. So, but we're getting the support we need to do what we need to do.
All right, and that support. Ivana, you're going to get the last word. Detroit is it. If people want to get more information, how they get in touch with your organization, even as just trying to start educating themselves or their kids.
Sure, DetroitisIt.com. But I would even say start small. Be local. Get involved with your local community. Think through what you're using. Even when you go to a Starbucks, ask them to not potentially put a top on the coffee. I mean, there's a million things that you can do as you start thinking as an individual how your moves impact your life, and then how as a corporation and an entity and an organization within the city, what every move that organization is doing, how difficult it is to actually translate that into something that is feasible. But really, start small, do your own part, and think bigger, because we're all in the same place and we're all doing the same thing, and ultimately it's all for the greater good.
And that's a good way to end this program. Ivana, Dan, Carla, Skiles, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we've shared some good information for people and to get your wheels going and to get you thinking a little bit more about a very important, very global topic. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.